you mentioned, Ethereum needs to upgrade. They've had issues with scaling, they've had issues with exorbitant fees, and so they're building Ethereum 2.0, and they're putting a lot of that stuff on the second layer. There are like four really competing pathways, but meanwhile you have things like Cardano, you have Solana, you have Binance Smart Chain, you have Tezos, you have all these other blockchains that are coming in and taking that market share. So is the future going to be all of these things? Can you see like a clear winner? I'm wondering whether people are still banking on Ethereum being able to get it together and win out the race, because meanwhile you have all of these teams that are hyper focused on just doing it at base layer, not adding second layer solutions in order to help the process. They're building it from the ground up. So it just seems like this very interesting time where everything's up in the air. We could go any way. It's just I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about the direction.
Yeah, I didn't understand how any of this stuff worked, half a decade ago, and that's why we wrote all these papers. We wrote them for our own benefits. Like, what is a blockchain? There was no rigorous, precise mathematical definition for that until Agalos and Juan and Nico Leonardis got together and they wrote the GKL model. Now I can read it and say, okay, I have a precise mathematical definition for what is a blockchain. Then I didn't really understand if proof of work actually works or not. If you talk to the Blockstream people, they say it's perpetual motion, it's a complete scam, it doesn't work at all, and they just rattle off these bizarre nothing at stake and long-range attacks and blah, 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 blah. They say stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe in 2011, with Peercoin, and 2013 with NXT, you had some valid points. But what we did, and others did, like the Cornell people with Snow White, and Silvio did with Algorand, and to what Vitalik did with Casper eventually, was we wrote papers, and we sat down and actually built security models and wrote proofs and showed that these things no longer are problems inside the models. Now, the reason why you want to build a new engine is just exactly to your point. Proof of work will never be energy efficient. It's impossible. It's like this bizarre fool's errand. Oh, well, we're using solar for it. Yeah, but that's like saying you're using corn for ethanol. It's like you're taking food out of the supply chain for energy. You can't have both. You can't have both food and energy. You pick one, okay? So you have to use, based on the price of the asset, an enormous amount of electricity. And if the asset gets even more successful, even more amount of electricity to do this. Now to the extent of like the entire country of Ecuador or Switzerland. If Bitcoin is truly a global currency that everybody uses, you probably use all the energy of Canada or Australia or even a bigger nation like the United States to power a system like that. And you still get 7 transactions per second of performance. And they say this is the best thing ever invented and you don't need to change it at all, and layer 2 will solve everything. It's like a cult saying Jesus is coming tomorrow. It's not real. It's magic. What Bitcoin did was show it's possible. Just like when you first light a fire, it shows it's possible to light and contain fire. But that doesn't equate to a lighter. That doesn't equate to a match. That doesn't equate to an arc welder. Okay, you have to actually innovate and build and advance and think about things and grow on the prior lessons. And that's what we did and other people did. So what's happening with the third generation is what's coming online, first with us and now others, are third generation consensus protocols that give you everything proof of work gave you, but then give you throughput that's orders of magnitude higher for the energy consumption of this hotel, for an entire global system, which is an amazing achievement. And the other thing they give you is heterogeneity. And this is a very important point. It's completely missed by the Bitcoin crowd. In Bitcoin, everything's homogeneous. So your node is the same as my node, same as Bob's node, same as Jim's node, and that's a feature. It's not a bug. And that's great if you have a minimum viable set of capabilities for everybody. But because you don't have specialization, you can't get performance. You can't get to the next level. You can't get dedicated specialized actors to do things. So think of it like biology. You have single cell organisms. They can survive and thrive. We have plenty of single cell organisms all around, but they don't have eyes. They don't have brains. They don't have locomotion. They can't walk. They can't do these things because you need cell specialization in order to have the emergent property of complex life. Economies are exactly the same way. You need to have specialization within your design of your system so that certain nodes do certain things, other nodes do certain things, and then together, emergently, the system now can be your voting system. It can now be your property system, your payment system. You have value stability and so forth. So, for example, with proof of stake, usually you have stake pools and delegators. Okay, what does that mean? You have a group of people who click a button and they come back periodically, but they could be on a cell phone, they could be on a laptop. They're not really running powerful nodes. Then you have another group of people who are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, running relays, big beefy computers, and they're punished if they're not. What does it mean? It means that if you have a lot of those dedicated people, you can also use them as network relays, as oracles, as random number generators, as hubs for multi-party computation. You can start adding all these other protocols they can run. And because they can run those protocols, they're now available as APIs to smart contracts. What does that mean? It means that suddenly you have all these other things. You have sight, you have hearing, you have cognition, you have new things the network could not have in a homogeneous model. The other thing is that because you have such a backbone and because you have increasingly more sophisticated cryptography, you suddenly means that you can have a better user experience at the endpoints. So instead of having a full node, you can have a cell phone. And you have full node security with it because you can verify the history you're getting is correct even though you don't have the blockchain. We're seeing that with Mina protocol or a protocol we wrote called Mithril and so forth. So that's really where we're at. And that's what the third generation is.
I like that.
It's cool. It's stake threshold multi-signature. It basically gives you full node security. You get a proof with a little certificate that the transaction you're seeing, the tokens exist and they haven't been double spent, but you don't need the blockchain for it. So like for kilobytes, you can verify petabytes of history. It's really a cool concept. So we're seeing an enormous amount of advancement there where you have specialization and heterogeneity and better engines at layer 1 and more programmability, more sensible programmability at layer 1. We're still trying to figure out the smart contract model. Ethereum was a global state system, so everybody knew each other's business. The problem with that is that you're only as good as the weakest link in the system, okay? Cardano's an extended UTXO system, so we took what Bitcoin did, we extended it, but it's still a local state. So your business is yours, not your neighbor's, and as a consequence, much easier to shard and much easier to scale a system like that. But there are trade-offs, and so everybody's trying to battle for what is the model of computation. Then layer 2 is all about optimization and interoperability. So it's saying, okay, take whatever is going on here, whatever business is going on here, and then take it to the next level, and then you get microtransactions and higher throughput, perhaps faster finality, and then also you can now talk to other systems. So the Internet of Blockchains idea. And there's an enormous amount of progress that's being made there as well. And you know, everybody's got an oracle, everybody's got a payment channel, everybody's got roll-ups and these types of things. And ultimately that evolves at faster or the same rate as we're seeing these protocols evolve at the base level. And they're becoming protocol agnostic. So, you know, we can mix and match. If somebody has a better identity system than us, it's open source, we can take it and put it on. If we have a better payment channel system than somebody else, they can take it, modify it, put it in their system. So there's a great convergence of technologies there. And just like the smartphones, the iPhone came out, it was so revolutionary. Now compare the iPhone to the Samsung Galaxy S21. They're both amazing devices, and if you look at the feature list, they're both comparable. There's, you know, taste and preference differences there, but it's not a revolutionary thing like, let's say, an iPhone to a BlackBerry in 2007, where, you know, one had a physical keyboard and did very little things, and this other one's just like, wow, it's a giant touchscreen, this is amazing, I can do all these magical things. And very similarly, we're starting to see that convergence of those things. So it's less about technology, and it's more about user experiences, community, and also how the community governs itself. That's really what, in my view, is going to decide who the winner is in the next 3 to 5 years in the smart contract wars and the infrastructure wars. It's how do you make decisions, how do you upgrade, how do you achieve decentralization of thought, and also how do you make sure the custodial organizations don't become dictatorial and basically take over the entire system and install bottlenecks in the system and control it. So for us, we built Catalyst, and you know, we built voting systems, and every day the ecosystem gets more and more on-chain voting, more and more upgrades, and there's fewer competitors in that space. Tezos is definitely one, and Decred and Dash and others, but for the most part, we're leading in terms of vote volume and value of voting and growth of voting and participation. We run probably the largest decentralized organization in the world with Catalyst. I think there's over 50, 60,000 registrants now, and it governs $600 million of decentralized treasury. And eventually it's going to start making decisions over protocol parameters. For example, how many stake pools in the system, or when to fork and how to fork, and you know, these types of things. So effectively it's a decentralized government. That's far more important because any technology that's good in market can be absorbed within 6 to 18 months. So it's less about what do you have, and it's more about how do you get there, who decides that, and also how do you ensure there's resiliency and reliability. And then for the Fortune 500, the governments, and for large actors, they tend to look at it and say, is it stable? it quicksand, or is it, you know, the change management constrained in a way where there's not going to be a crisis? With Bitcoin, suddenly we have Bitcoin Cash. Ethereum, suddenly we have Ethereum Classic. It scares people. They're like, what do I do? I have 2 tokens. What the fuck do I do? And I pick one, and everybody else in the other one hates me and says I'm a horrible human being. Like, I don't have time for this. I know. It's like when your religion splits. It's like, well, now we have 2 prophets. It's like, well, do you like Bob or Alice? It's like, oh God, what do I do? I don't want to get my head cut off. This is crazy. So that's where we're at in the cryptocurrency space with a lot of these protocols, because there's no governance system.